Hello and welcome to episode 1 of Penny Red, a podcast about the role-playing game Victoria and about role-playing in general. My name is Daniel Hodges, writer and designer of Victoria and your host. And that stilted introduction, ladies and gentlemen, is all that remains of my first attempt to record a podcast. It very quickly became apparent to me that listening to a single person talking is not very interesting. At least, it's not very interesting when that single person talking is me. So, before the first episode was even released, I changed the format of the show. Every week I'm going to have a guest with me, somebody who I roleplay with currently, somebody who I've roleplayed with in the past, or in the case of this first episode, my parents. Now, I'm not sure how many people have their parents as their first guest on a podcast, but my suspicions are that it's probably more than you might think. I hope you'll give me a pass on that one, though, because they're going to help me remember some of the details of when I first became interested in role-playing. During the interview, you'll get to hear my mother call my friends and I stupid, and you'll get to hear me go after my father for the lack of parental care he showed when his son became interested in a dangerous and obsessive hobby. Lastly today, I'm going to talk about one of my favourite books, Project Twilight, which will involve a trip down memory lane and into the mind of Bob Schnoblin. During this and subsequent podcasts, I'll make reference to YouTube videos that I've watched or books or websites that I've read, and I'll put those in the show notes so that you can check them out as well. The show notes and information about Victoria the role-playing game can be found at pennyredpodcast.com and hazardgaming.com respectively. Today's show starts with Penny Red's first guest, the person who I have to thank for getting me my very first pieces of role-playing equipment. I've got my mother on the phone. She's from New Zealand. How's it going, Mum?
Hi.
I wrote a few things about you in the blog. One about going to get the dice for me, but more interestingly, because I think a lot of people can identify with it, about the secretary that there was at the school. But before I get into that, do you remember the first time you heard anything about Dungeons and Dragons?
I remember you coming home very excited about a game and then spending a lot of time telling me and Dad about it and talking about it with your friends.
In my recollection, I got a book called What is Dungeons and Dragons? Now, I seem to remember that the aunt bought me it because it said Dungeons and Dragons on the cover and it looked exciting. There was a dragon coming off the front. But as I said in my blog, it was a pretty thinly veiled attempt to cash in on some of the money that Dungeons and Dragons was making at the time. But talking a little bit about the going to get the dice, when you finally found your way to the pokey little dark shop, did you have any idea of what it was you're exactly looking for?
No, I didn't. I went into the shop and said I needed some dice for Dungeons and Dragons. And he said, well, which ones do you want? And I said, well, I don't actually know. You tell me. And so he selected dice for me, which I bought, and took home for you.
So had you seen them previous?
Nothing about.
Had you seen any previous to that, like to know whether you had the right thing? Like, did I describe what they looked like, or did I have a picture to show you of them? Because I seem to recall that on the cover of the book there were all these various polyhedral dice coming out of their eyes. So I've had a feeling I must have at least showed you, or perhaps sent you with the book. But like, did you like open the packet, look at them, and go, "Oh, that's strange," or "Oh, yes, that's what I'm looking for"?
No, I think I had an idea that they had multi-side, but other than that, I didn't really know. No, I know that they looked like alien dice to me. I didn't even know that you could get dice with more than the ordinary dots on them. They were very strange-looking dice.
Did the people in the shop give you strange looks seeing you in there? I mean, there can't have been that many, I don't want to say middle-aged because that would be inaccurate, but older ladies going into like role-playing shops. There can't have been that many of them sort of strolling about.
I certainly didn't see any other women of my age, and I did feel a little odd going in there, so I dare say that other people thought that it was a bit odd me being there also.
Were people playing games and stuff in there, or was it just really milling around and looking at the new books and the new this and the new that?
Yeah, I don't recall anybody playing anything, but there were quite a few people, or men, young guys, milling about, but not playing any games.
Right, and I think that this was probably around about 1984, right? That you were going to get these dice, something like that, probably.
It wouldn't have been before '84, but it may have been '86 1985, but yeah, somewhere around there, yeah.
Yeah. Up until that point, were you aware at all of Dungeons and Dragons in the media or anybody talking about it?
No, I didn't know anything about it until you came home excited about it. That was my first inkling of it.
And even subsequently, anything in the news? Because the reason that I bring it up is that there was a 60-minute program about Dungeons and Dragons, and I actually watched it on YouTube again the other day. If you look up Dungeons and Dragons 1985, 60 minutes, you'll probably find, well, you should be able to find it. It's in two parts, but it's actually quite a good news article in as much as, it talks to Gary Gygax and the lawyers, but it also talks a lot to the mothers whose sons had committed suicide or any of these various numbers of things. And after seeing that again, and I remember thinking, this is a credible news outlet, it was extremely biased, and it was really sort of scaremongering. Did you get any sense of that? Because from talking to role players over here and in America at conventions and so forth, there's really a lot of stigma about Dungeons and Dragons or role-playing in general. There's still, even now, I find that when I go to describe the game, I'm really reluctant to say Dungeons and Dragons to people of a certain age. Do you remember anything like that in the media, or?
No, I don't remember anything about it, but that might be because we lived in such a small town that it wasn't something people knew about. It was a farming town, wasn't it? So maybe Dungeons and Dragons wasn't played by anyone else, because you first heard it from someone out of the district, didn't you?
It wasn't strictly speaking true that nobody had heard of Dungeons and Dragons. Nobody had heard anything positive about it. You worked at the school, right? Like at a primary school, and one of the best days of my life is when the primary school got a photocopier. Tim had basic Dungeons and Dragons. I don't think it was the red box set, but the books were certainly red. And having access to these, I asked you to take them to school and photocopy them.
Yeah, well, that was maybe the secretary had seen that documentary, because when I said to her I didn't have time to photocopy these things myself, could she do it for me? I'd pay for it to be done. She said, no way, I'm not having anything to do with Dungeons and Dragons. It's evil stuff, and I won't do it.
Did she look terrified that they were even in the school, or did she have a visceral response to their very existence, or was it just the idea of it?
Well, she just sort of took a step back and looked quite defensive, really. Whenever I went to photocopy stuff for you after that, I always had to do it in the lunch hour when she had gone away home to her house for lunch.
Apart from that one reaction, did she ever pass on any details about, my pastor told me it was evil, or because she was pretty religious, right?
She was religious, yes, but no, she never mentioned it again, and I never mentioned it to her. I just snuck in and photocopied and hurried away again.
Under cover of darkness.
Exactly, almost.
So you got those books home, and then I remember back in those days, I had done role-playing with Mark, but I don't think that I was especially close to him in terms of visiting him on a regular basis to do this. That meant that I had to find somebody to role-play with, and probably like most people that are listening to this podcast, they've tried to get their mothers and fathers and brothers to play with them. I was a little bit unfortunate in that respect that Ben, that's my brother, wasn't really old enough. You guys had no idea about it, and
At all.
I certainly didn't have much of an idea about what was going on, but I seem to remember that one of the first things I did was make a character with you, and I think you wanted to call it something like Arachnid. I don't suppose you recall.
I don't recall that, no, but I do remember you trying to get me to play the game. Every time I wanted to do something, you said, no, you can't do that. And I said, okay, well, then I'll do that. No, you can't do that. But I'll do this bit. No, you can't do that. So I said, right, I'm not going to play anymore.
Yeah, that's actually...
That was my experience of Dungeons and Dragons.
It's a difficult thing to describe, because while there are rules, and you might say, I want to go to the car and open the door and drive away, every time you come up against something that could conceivably be opposed, like the car door is locked, or there's no keys, or something to that effect. Every time you come up against that, that's really how role-playing differs from regular storytelling. The action, the drama stuff comes from the environment or other people in the story opposing your actions. And did I just fail to describe that? Or?
Well, having been told that